Saturday, April 2nd, 2011. I'm here in my office and I thought I'd mention a few films that I'd recently watched. Some of them I have online, I have bookmarked or favorited and I'm subscribing to, or I've purchased these other DVDs that they relate to what I'm about to talk about. The show that really was interesting was the Prophets of Doom, put out by the History Channel. It deals with the problems facing the United States of America, and these guys, they get together in a room and discuss the different scenarios that could take place given the current situations in the world. Mostly pertaining to along the lines of peak oil and peak resource usage, water problems, migration, that sort of thing, overpopulation. The first guy, Nathan Higgins, he discusses banking and finance and how everything's like we've created too much debt, and there could be coming up down the road a new currency, because basically they've issued too much credit. And then the other fellow, John Cronin, discusses a water crisis, and that being the Ogallala, excuse me if I'm not pronouncing it right. It's an aquifer in the Oklahoma, west of the, or actually east of the east of the Rocky Mountains, the aquifer that's used to pump water out of the ground. That where we get a lot of the water for watering our crops and livestock, animal feed. And they'll go on, and then there's another fellow, James Kunstler. He talks about the coming petrol collapse being, well, not really a collapse, a resetting of the energy in, energy out equation. Also the availability of inexpensive gasoline fuel supplies from the light sweet crude depletion. And they talk about train travel becoming more commonplace for traveling, and the cost of food going up because of fuel it takes to move trucks around the country to transport food and material goods is getting more expensive, diesel costs. And then the other fellow, Hugo de Garis, talks about like technology affecting business pertaining to the uses of computer technology, artificial intelligence, and how new technology through artificial intelligence may affect the consumer, how consumer electronics is going, and people eventually will have their own like maids or butlers, or sex toys, whatever, dolls that move and animate, and then Robert Gleason talks about threats of nuclear war and terrorists getting a hold of nuclear materials, fanatical religious groups, security of the nuclear material, because it's where it's stored and how secure is it, is it going to get into the wrong hands? Is it going to be used for like a low-grade nuclear explosives, dirty bombs? John Cronin really emphasizes protecting our water supply and the quality of the water and the availability of water for agriculture. I mean, recently we had the rain totals in California have gone up, so there is some less of a problem there with the drought in California. But that's pretty good outlook to have for water and where water is coming from in the future. I think the biggest remedy they seem to tout in the discussion is that we need to relocalize our food. We need to make things locally more, so we don't ship things from so far away, especially food. they could have mentioned conservation more, you know, as a remedy, because it's about the only thing anybody can, you know, do is just to, you know, to how we use our resources as a species. You know, it's just, it's painful and discomforting to change. You know, it's inconvenient. You know, and basically people aren't going to do that unless it's absolutely necessary. They're going to wait till it gets to so bad. Their things are so expensive that they'll eventually it'll force them. The economy will force them to have to change their lifestyle. And that was a pretty good show. I think I have to agree mostly with the peak oil people. You know, as oil gets more expensive, how's that going to affect things? Not quite too sure on the artificial intelligence part. And the water part is something that people can do at home. They can use rainwater and use less water for flushing toilets and change their shower head and go to, you know, use, if they're going to wash their car, park their car on their lawns and wash their car on their lawn, or go to a car wash where they recycle the water, or they, you know, reuse it in the car wash. And also golf courses and big huge lawns, you know, they're just constantly have to be sprayed with water by sprinkler systems, you know, like big open areas, golf courses and cemeteries and places like that use a lot of water that's non-agricultural use. You know, they could have mentioned that about the water. So yeah, it was you know, it was interesting. I'm usually disappointed in the History Channel in that they seem to have a lot on there about like ghosts and UFOs and, you know, Bigfoot and, you know, conspiracies, and that for once they actually are talking, you know, something that's, I think that's relevant. The other show I've been watching is the Earth 2100, and I have that also favorited. In this show, they present a hypothetical situation of what happens between now and the year 2100 when a person is born today, and they follow that person's their life, and they kind of create a storyboard, illustrated. You know, if you like, you know, if you like to be impressed with special effects and the CGI and things blowing up and, you know, big disasters, things getting knocked down, blown up, whatever, I wouldn't. This isn't the film for you. It's not really for entertain. It's not the entertainment of the film. It's the actual presenting the ideas. And I think that's what's kind of. I have to say that if anybody's interested in watching it, but it just goes on to show you the preparation that needs to be done. That I was watching Peak Moment, and I think one of their last videos they were interviewing a gentleman there saying about we have to use what we have available now to prepare for what the future may bring, especially in the area of peak oil. I know they talk a lot about rising sea levels and the coming climate, the way the climate's going to change on the Earth. It would cause like mass migrations, and in the desert, the Southwest will go back to a desert. There won't be any water there, like Phoenix and Las Vegas. And talk about people having to migrate away, and them using desalination plants in the ocean to take the salt out of the water. The best part about this was that there were solutions to the food, water, and power problems by implementing it at a local level. I mean, using available land around where people lived and built greenhouses, built them into the building, you know, refurbished or rebuilt the buildings to be able to produce some agriculture, and also putting up wind turbines locally on buildings and I guess parking lots, and building solar locally, putting up solar where the electricity was being used at usage sources or close by. Electric vehicles too, and electric transportation. So throughout the life of this character, she ends up growing up, and everybody has to leave New York because it's underwater because of the rising sea level. And yeah, it was good. It was using. We talked about flu pandemic, and Heidi Cohen using extreme measures to block the sunlight by spraying particulates in the upper atmosphere with jet planes. And that failed actually because they didn't know what the effects were going to be. It was a shot it was just like a gamble, a shot in the dark, that spraying something in the atmosphere would make the climate cooler. And they interviewed Edwin O. Wilson a little bit. He talked about the loss of biodiversity. Michael Pollan, he talked about a meat-eating diet, that our diet, the food we eat, that's the factory-grown, raised pigs, chickens, cows, where we get our meat from, that uses a lot of energy and a lot of water. So he talked about that. And anyhow, these are some of the other films that I have. This is the No Impact Man. He's this gentleman in New York, and his wife and child are trying to live sustainably in New York City. And he shows how he has to use the train. He gives up TV, and he gives up meat. He gives up traveling in any vehicle. He uses a bicycle to get around. And they actually shut their power off in their apartment and try to live not have electricity. And they do that for a while in the summertime. And then he has he uses composting worms too, to break down the soil for growing growing nutrient for the plants. And that was interesting. Good film. I think he's got some good ideas. I hope that what he's doing will take off, become more popular. People try to do that. And this show here is really interesting. The Colony. It was acting. I understand that it was acting. It wasn't real. Of course, it was pretend. But during the play, and the pretending of these things happening, they ran across certain situations and certain problems that arose under this kind of potential hypothetical situation. Now, if you want, then again, I'm saying if you like CGI and special effects and you want to be, razzled and dazzled, it's not really a show for that. It's more of a show for people in problem situations and how they get out of it and how they get together and combine their knowledge and their skills and resources and survive through a crisis situation. And it's another movie I have yet to watch on victory gardening. Growing your own food locally around your property where you live at. And Survivor Man, he's this gentleman that goes out in the wild wilderness areas and uses a minimal amount of materials, just enough to build basic shelter, find food, keep warm, and survive in a situation where he's alone in the woods. It's very similar to this gentleman here, Bear Grylls, except he's more about getting out of the wild area back to civilization, whereas Survivor Man just camps and stays there. And he tells you about getting clean water and building a fire and building shelter for yourself. Some problems people could have if they're stranded out in the woods. How to get help, how to get rescued, how to find your way out. So that's my, rant for the day on these films that I have. Take care.